Hi, folks. Welcome back to the PagerDuty Twitch channel. It is Wednesday. I'm Mandy Walsh, DevOps advocate here at PagerDuty, and today I have an interesting guest with me. This is Jason Flint. Jason, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do here at PagerDuty.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jason. I am a senior manager for workplace and crisis response here at PagerDuty. So as you can imagine, it's been the past couple of years, doing things from the pandemic to business continuity and also physical security and generally crisis response overall. So lots of things going on, lots happening in my world, and it's about PagerDuty.
Yeah, so as part of the PagerDuty, company, you use PagerDuty in ways that our tech teams don't necessarily use it. So while it was built for technical practitioners and technical audiences, you guys have the ability to use it for other things. So you're going to tell us all about that today.
Yeah, definitely. I love the versatility of the platform, and hopefully, folks that tuned in could, really connect with the things that I talk about today.
Awesome.
All right. So why don't I go ahead and share my screen so we can run through a few things here. Make sure it's the right one. All right. Hopefully everyone can
There
see
we
that.
go. Yeah, excellent.
All right, great. So here to talk to you about using PagerDuty for PagerDuty and specifically with crisis response. Um, so I just want to talk to you about three things really that kind of, summarizes how we're using PagerDuty for crisis response. The first thing is crisis board. So if you've seen detective movies, you see this really big board with like investigative clues and tips and things like that, and then they map it together with a mosaic. This is sort of the concept that I use to describe this the best, and it's really just bringing in multiple sources of information and data into one place, which PagerDuty helps us do. So we get information from weather alert services, from threat intelligence services through third parties, other type of alerting capabilities that are out there can really get pulled into PagerDuty, and that helps us see everything on one board and also helps us track things long term. So it's a far from trying to predict the future, a general sense of like trends and things like that that we want to track. And then the next thing is when we talk about escalation, not everything that happens in the world is an emergency, is a crisis, is a disaster. So there's a lot of work that we have to do to determine what things that we need to respond to and how. So PagerDuty helps us when we talk about escalating something that's at the local level, like a fire drill, a fire emergency, should be more at the global level, like a national power outage or something like that. So we can do that within the platform. And I'll show you how we do that in a few minutes. And then lastly, when it comes to responding, you don't want to wake everybody up at 3 a.m. And PagerDuty does this really well, getting the right alerts, the right people at the right time. So within the platform, we can use response plays to activate teams or specific individuals that can help us rather than pulling everybody into that alert or that incident and then having sort of a messy response and some issues with decision making. So it leads us to a leaner a crisis in a way that's more efficient for us. So I think these three things really are how we summarize the crisis response, and how we use it in the platform, and I can show you. And of course, we can talk about anything that in terms of questions or anything that you want us to show as well.
Yeah, for folks that are joining us, like what kinds of, you mentioned like a whole bunch of different things that you're kind of keeping an eye on as far as like crisis goes. Like what kinds of things are you thinking about? You mentioned weather, you mentioned other kinds of like fires. Like what all is in the scope of the things that you're looking at there?
Yes, I think our scope really it determines on where our employees are located and impacts to our business. So we're highly distributed workforce. So that makes us more of a global focused crisis organization, thinking about what's happening, whether it's just like crime or weather or like even things from the economy to could impact the business. So those things are all the different things that we're trying to track and make sure that we get ahead of and plan for essentially.
And these are things that impact PagerDuty as a company, but also potentially employees in various places, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So specifically, like some of our office locations, when I talk about like a fire drill, a fire alarm, or things like that, obviously those things are more localized. More serious if it's like a total loss situation where you're losing one of your offices, then like you need to escalate that to someone, right? Because you need additional resources and help to resolve that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, all right. We have our first question
Yeah.
in the chat here. Rachel Free asks, I would guess a lot of executives are curious or would want to stay in the loop when a crisis happens, even if it's maybe not in their main purview or it really directly impacts their team. But how did you think through like which ones to just inform and which ones get added to a response team?
Yeah. I think one of the beauties of PagerDuty is some of the integrations that they have. So one that we use often is the Slack, and that allows us to sort of create this channel where we can have this long like timeline or a list of things that are happening. So when we do acknowledge an event or escalate an event, that shows up in that sort of that feed. So that helps us communicate without communicating is the way I put it. So anyone that's in that feed is seeing what's happening. Like your execs can see that, all right, we acknowledge this thing happened in the East Coast of the US, but we're not escalating it yet. And you can also add in notes, and those would also pop in as well. So I think overall, that's the biggest issue for crisis teams. It's really like knowing what to respond to, what to escalate, what to sort of just wait and see on, which is a term that a lot of our tech folks use. So I think that to that, it all depends on what you of your crisis and what those thresholds are within your company.
Does that end up being like a group decision? There's a specific group of folks who are participating in that decision making?
Yeah, exactly. There's a team that we pull together from, it's a cross-functional team, and we kind of talk through what are the direct impacts, like which employees are impacted, which segment of the business is impacted. And one of the things that we did is we created sort of this impact assessment or incident assessment that you run through before you jump into that conference bridge and start talking about the incident, which tells you, is this a SEV1? Is this a SEV3? So that way you can have a better coming into basically.
Yeah, look, we do the same thing for tech services, right? Like, what's the impact?
Yeah.
How wide is it? How long's it been going on? All those same kind of rubrics then fit for these kinds of things that happen more in the real world versus what happens in the tech world. That's great.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Do you want to show us a bit about how your account works and how the things sort of translate for what you're doing? So for folks who are using PagerDuty, like we have the technical structures that are sort of built like services, and then you've got your business services and your teams and all those things. It'd be interesting to hear how you've translated those into this workflow.
Absolutely. Let me go ahead on my screen here. All right. So hopefully you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so this is kind of our landing page. This is our crisis board, as you call it. So you can see we're tracking a lot of different types of things here. So everything from our systems, processes, and also to things that are considered crises events, and then also things that are safety related. So the way that we went through and set this up is pretty simple. Any PagerDuty account, you define your teams. Us, we've gone ahead and created a crisis response team. Right now, it just has me in it. This is a demo account. And then what you really want to do after that is start thinking about your on-call schedule. And so I created a couple schedules here, and we'll talk through some of the differences. So this is one for crisis response, and you'd go through and set that. And then the next one is your escalation policies. So for this, we're just going to use that on-call schedule for a couple of different services that I've created. And then sort of the second is your services. So traditionally within PagerDuty, these services are, your internet service, your network activity, your, whatever technical service that you have. But for us, when we think, we are a service as crisis response. We're providing this service to the organization, which is to make sure that we respond to a crisis appropriately so our business continues to run properly. And the same thing with safety. We're providing a safety service just to our general business. And then more your traditional technical systems like our physical security systems we have in our offices or intrusion detection systems that we may have as well. All right, and then once you do that, I think the next piece that's very important is response plays. So for our team, when I talk about that modular response activity, we can have different teams that respond to different types of situations. We can have an IT team, we can have a safety team, we can have an emergency team. And for here, I created two teams, a blue team and a red team. So let's just say the blue team monitors sort of operations, the red team monitors our West Coast operations. So when we affects something on the East Coast, we just run this response play for the blue team and they know exactly what to do as they're activated.
Okay.
So I think kind of it in a nutshell. That's how we've set it up. And, it doesn't veer too far from the traditional use cases for PagerDuty in terms of the setup, but it's just a difference of like language that's used on the crisis side.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about like the way you've used the services and how you've termed those, that sort of reflection of where things are coming from and where they're meant to go is kind of interesting versus what you might see in the technical side where your services are going to be like, here's the database and does these things and all that kind of stuff. So that part's super interesting for that.
Yeah, exactly. And when we went through, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we went through and thought about it, like a lot of like DevOps and IT and technical elements, like they're connected to systems.
Yeah.
Connected to people, and people automate up to send a trigger an alert or anything like that. So we just thought about this a little bit differently.
Yeah. No, and the translation seems to look pretty intuitive from that perspective. So for folks that are considering that kind of solution, it might be super interesting. We have a couple questions in the chat. The first one's pretty good. One of the things we talk about, the advocates do, is we work with some of our customers to help them with their postmortem or post-incident review process. And do you have a similar review process after a crisis response, or is there a threshold for something that may have happened that you want to like go back and review the process and what happened and all those kinds of things?
Absolutely. I think after every single event that's been escalated to an emergency or crisis, we always want to have what we call after action report, which is basically the same.
Yeah.
We go through and we define like lessons learned, what happened, what decisions were made, and then also how we can improve the process the next time around. So it's just a continuous learning process when it comes to, our after action reports. So I think that's right in line with how postmortems work. And, I think there's a lot of information that PagerDuty postmortems offer that weren't traditionally in an after action report. Like the event, like what time things were acknowledged, how long it took you to respond, like all that is very important from a metrics perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, we definitely encourage folks to take that next step and learn. Not only on the technical side, we're learning not only how to remediate the same incident for the next time, but also to then improve that practice. So that's a really interesting part for you guys. For the places where you're gathering data, like how do you think about those? Or like we talked about like you've got things that you're thinking about, but like where do you get data like that? Are you pulling things from news sources? Are you subscribed to the Weather Channel or other things like that?
Yeah, it's essentially like they are very low tech solutions to getting that data in. So one of the things that we use is the USGS, which is
Okay.
earthquake tracking. All
Yeah.
right, so you can go in there and pretty much set your thresholds for when you want to be alerted for a type of earthquake. So for us, we said 6.0 and above is when we want to see an alert pop up in
Oh,
our
okay.
system.
Yeah.
So that does help us reduce some of the noise, but in some of the other places, there's no way to set that threshold. So we're just getting pretty much everything in there. But PagerDuty does a really good job of sort of, I forgot what it's called, but I think it's grouping together
Hmm.
threats that do come in or alerts that do come in, and then also showing you references to older threats and things like that, which I think.
Uh-oh. Did, did we lose you? Oh,
I think I'm
I
still
think
here.
we missed the last part of your last answer there. It kind of froze on
Oh,
us.
sorry about that. Yeah, so the threats are pretty much grouped within the platform, and then it helps go back and look at the trends and things like that long term.
Cool. Are there then things that like you set out to learn on that you think like what's your process for like we call it sort of alert cleanup, right, on the technical side. What do you look at then in that same process for on your side? Are you, unsubscribing from things that maybe aren't useful anymore, or you've decided maybe aren't as important, or
Yeah, yeah. I think what we do is we take a how many of these alerts we're getting that are basically like not important or non-essential at the time. So if we take a look at this list here, I would say that sort of concerns about borders in terms of code, that's probably something that's more
Mhm.
of a recurring alert that we're going to keep getting. So for
Yeah.
those, we definitely want to go in and unsubscribe to those.
Cool. I that it's super interesting. Like we have a podcast episode coming out later in the month about our sort of reworking our HA and disaster recovery plans on the technical side. And it's super interesting to see then for the people and personnel and facility side, like what kind of thought goes into all of that process. Like so for this kind of solution and then the group that you're working with, like how long have you been using this sort of process? How long is it taking you to sort of build all this up this way?
Yeah, I think initially it took us quite a while to translation from the original PagerDuty use case to something that can be functional for our teams. But once we figured that piece out, and I think every organization has to take a look and think about their processes and then how that. Once you've done that piece, really getting the system set up is quite easy. It's really just those teams, those policies, the services installed, and then just getting your teams trained. What it means when you do get an alert, is it to a Zoom call? Is it jump to a conference bridge, or is it go to your checklist and do X, Y, Z and meet in 30 minutes? So I think there is some planning to do before you jump into the platform and start thinking about
Yeah.
these things. But our team has been using PagerDuty for quite a while, like a couple of months now. We've actually been using this. So
Yeah, so it's a pretty new solution for us internally as things have sort of emerged, especially with the pandemic and the remote work and like how all that stuff has evolved over the past 2 years. Now it's interesting to see this kind of technical solution emerging for folks to really, mobilize people as fast as you need to. But like you say, if you've got places where you've already got like a checklist and here's the clipboard that we need to go through for a sort of emergency response anyway, and the things that we already have lined up and how that translates in. That's super interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Was there anything else you'd like to share with us today? If there's any more questions, if folks want to put those in the chat, that would be great. Um, Yeah. So
I,
of the things that you've learned with this, as you've been using it, like has there been any like surprises or things that you weren't sure how they were gonna go that have been good or bad?
yeah, I think the biggest surprise has been sort of working this into like work processes and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I think as you start to include other stakeholders in this process, just making sure that they know exactly what's going on and how to use the system has been
Yeah.
something that we've been working on. Um, so I think not everyone has the same familiarity with the platform, but as long as they're set up and use that on-call readiness report to see that
Yes.
people are
Yeah.
ready to receive alerts. As long as you do that, you're part.
Yeah, the on-call readiness report, I'm gonna find that link. I usually have that close by, but they are super handy for everyone who's using the platforms. Like you say, it like gives you an idea of who on your team has set up places to be alerted from, whether they've got the mobile app or they've got their phone number for SMS or whatever else set up, and you can get that report for your full team so that, yeah, since you're working with sort of non-traditional responders, at least from the PagerDuty platform, like knowing that they've gone through and can say, yeah, go ahead and text me, then that's a super handy report to run. I'm going to put that in the chat for folks so they can see that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, that's an excellent idea. I love
Yeah.
that use. That the on-call readiness reports definitely is super handy for everybody.
Yeah, it is really. And
That's a
another thing
top
that we've
10.
done is definitely another thing we've done is that we've added using PagerDuty into some of our exercises, which is part of
Okay.
that, like the postmortem process, which is like to get better. Like let's put the actual platform to use while we're doing exercises, so people get alerted, and they can respond, and we can sort of manage that exercise through the.
Oh, so that's interesting. For the, so that would that be for things like you've got like the fire drill in the office
Yeah.
or things like that where you'd be okay. Oh, that's interesting
Yeah. So
too.
I come up with our team through it. So things like a system outage followed by like a medical emergency. Like what do you do? How do you manage that in PagerDuty? So all of those things go into how we use the platform.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Excellent. Those are super good things to think about for folks. Yeah. Awesome. So are there any future improvements that you're looking forward to? Or are there things you have planned for the next year or so that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think, sort of going forward, what we want to do is think about adding more and sort of intelligence to our threat board and just making sure that we get the right thresholds for things. Definitely working on cleaning up some of those subscriptions is one of the things we need to do. And then also just like generally letting employees know when is this a crisis, when is this an emergency, how to trigger these things. So it's not just our team that's triggering, but any person within the organization trigger this. That's happening that we need to know about.
Awesome. Sounds
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I don't see any other questions, but we'll be saving this off and we'll post it on YouTube as well for folks who want to view it later. So we'll be watching for comments and things there. We'd love to hear any input from folks. If you've got other questions, we can forward on. You can use our community forums. You can contact our team. We're community-team@pagerduty.com. We're happy to help in any way we can. So yeah, Jason, thank you for sharing all of this with us.
Yeah, thank you.
So how did you get involved in this kind of thing? Like this is an interesting sort of of niche. What's your background that brought you to this?
Started off as a private investigator. So, think about the guy sitting in a car with binoculars
Yes.
doing surveillance operations and things like that. And from there, physical security systems and making sure that our 100+ cameras are up and running for the most part in our locations. And then I transitioned into risk management and then also crisis response. So just a long history of things that are basically weird that happen in the world and just being ready for them essentially.
That is a lot of serendipity. That is a very, very interesting personal origin story. 100%.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
We'll want to hear more about that at some point, I'm sure. So, all right.
Yes,
Well,
definitely.
everybody, thank you, everyone out there who's been watching. Jason, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Super interesting use of our platform for things that everybody probably has on their mind right now, especially after the past couple of years. So awesome. All right.
All right. Well, thanks,
Awesome.
Mandy.
Jason, excellent. Thank you. For those out there,
All
if
right.
this is your first visit to our channel, make sure you follow us at the bottom there. We thank you all for joining us. If you're joining us from YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're at youtube.com/PagerDuty, and we would love to hear from you. If you'd like to reach out to me, I'm LNXCHK on Twitter, or you can email our team or community-team@pagerduty.com. We would love to hear from you. If you have an interesting story of things that you're doing with PagerDuty that aren't the usual thing, right? We'd love to hear about it, and we'd love to showcase you on our show. So give us a shout. And otherwise, we'll be back on Friday for PagerDuty Garage, and we'll see you then. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Make sure you never miss a stream. Follow us at PD Community and PagerDuty on twitch.tv. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you'd like to be on our stream, email us at community-team@pagerduty.com so we can feature the cool things you're doing. And don't forget, check out all of our global events on our calendar at pagerduty.com/events.